If you please remain standing for a moment of silent reflection and think of Sandra who passed away on the weekend. She was 44 years with the Ontario Provincial Police, involved in a lot of events around the community, was with the Matthew House. So offer Officer Sinclair, please. Thank you. At this time, we want to acknowledge that we are on the lands traditionally occupied by the Indigenous people that continue to care for this land, that continue to shape the town of New Tecumseth, and we want to show our respect hundreds of years after the first treaty was signed, that they are still relevant today. Thank you. Awards and recognitions, anyone? Councillor Noah.
Thank you, Worship. I'd like to speak on behalf of the OPP. It's sort of a cute story. As I told you before, I had my little dog out in the driveway doing her business before we went to bed. And all of a sudden, some lights pulled in my driveway. And here was an OPP officer. So he come up and I looked out and he was up petting a little dog. He thought it was a stray. So they're looking after animals, keeping their eyes open for animals. So I'd like to thank the OPP. I don't know the officer's name, but I thought I'd bring it up. It was sort of a cute story. So the dog is safe anyway. She was on a leash. So
thank you. Okay. And we'll bring that up at the next police board meeting. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mayor Milne. Just like to take a second to recognize Stevenson Memorial Hospital, Jody Levesque and all the staff at the hospital on the impending opening of 4 level 2 ICU beds. That's a huge accomplishment for the hospital, for the staff, and for the town of New Tecumseth to have those beds available. That means there'll be a number of people that have family members in the intensive care that don't have to leave the municipality in order to tend to their loved ones. So congratulations to the hospital and everybody else and to the entire community. It's a huge accomplishment.
Definitely, thank you. Anyone else? All right then, I'll go to the clerk to identify items to add or delete. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have no items to add or delete to the agenda.
Thank you. Motion moved by Councillor Beattie, second by Councillor Foster. Be resolved that the agenda for the council meeting held on January 11th, 2021 be confirmed and circulated. All in favor? Councillor Beattie and Councillor Foster.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. This time anyone has to declare a pecuniary interest now or when the item comes up. Councillor Lacey.
Thank you, Worship. CW42, that's the 2021 designation of municipally significant events. I'm a member of the CRIC committee.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McClellan. I believe you have a same conflict.
I don't think the picnic was on the list this year. Does it carry over?
I'll go to the.
Through Your Worship, what I could indicate is that Councillor McClellan had declared a pecuniary interest at the last meeting with regards to CW42.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's been a while. It was, yes, I have a conflict on CW42 for the Allison Ladies Baseball League. Yes, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moved by Councillor Harrison McIntyre, second by Councillor Jebb, that be resolved that the minutes of the council meeting dated December 14, 2020 be adopted and circulated. Any questions? All in favor? For Councillor Beattie.
Thanks, Your Worship. Sorry about that. I would just draw your attention to page 9 of 45 under the adoption of the minutes. I'm identified as the seconder.
Yeah,
but I declared on one of the items. So I would need to be removed as the seconder. Thanks.
Thank you. And it would be Councillor Lacey, Madam Clerk, would be the seconder. Thank you, Councillor Beatty. I'll go to the clerk to identify items for separate discussion, the reasons thereof. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. So under the council, we have C-1, which is the Municipal Woman of Influence in Local Governance nomination. So we're looking for direction. And C-2 is County of Simcoe Bursary 2020 recipients and its correspondence to receive.
Okay.
Sorry, through Your Worship. And we do have item 3, which is the verbal report of the CAO.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'll go to council to identify items for separate discussion. Deputy Mayor Norcross.
Thanks, Your Worship. CW21, please.
Thank you. Councillor Beatty.
Thanks, Your Worship. I wanted to pull communication item 1, but since it would be discussing potential nominees or identifiable individuals, I'm wondering if that conversation needs to happen in a closed session. I'm not sure.
In camera, I believe. I'll go to the clerk.
Through Your Worship, if it was going to be a member of council, that could be discussed in public. If we're looking at discussing a member of the public, then we could go into close.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Okay. Did I see someone else with a Councillor Sainsbury?
Thank you, Your Worship. CW31, please. CAO report.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, I'll go back to the clerk to summarize all items identified for separate discussion.
okay, thank you, Your Worship. We have C-1, C-2, CW21, Police Services Board minutes dated October 28th, 2020, and item 3.
And CW31.
Can we get clarification on that? Because I thought they said CAO's report.
Yeah, it was written by the CAO, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's written by the CIO and the fire chief, the train whistle report.
The train whistle. Okay,
Yes.
that's correct. CW31, which is the train whistle at public crossings.
Good, thank you. Anyone else? Moved by Councillor McClellan, second by Deputy Mayor
Councillor
Norcross.
Jab, Councillor Jab has her card up.
Councillor Jab.
Your Worship, should CW42 be pulled too? Because there was a pecuniary interest?
You would be correct.
Thank you. Be it resolved that the item CW1 to CW5 on the Committee of the Whole meeting report dated December 14, 2020, with the exceptions of those items identified for separate discussion, be approved and the recommendation therein be adopted. And further, that item CS1 on the Committee of the Whole closed meeting report dated December 14, 2020, be approved and the recommendation therein be adopted. Any questions? All in favor? Carried, thank you. CW1.
C-1.
C-1.
That was me, Your Worship. Thanks very much.
Councillor Beatty.
Yeah, thanks. I'll be brief. The nomination deadline is actually this coming Friday, the 15th. So I would be happy to nominate our colleague, Councillor Fran Sainsbury, if somebody would second the nomination. And we could nominate her and submit that by the end of the week. I think that Councillor Sainsbury has extensive experience across multiple jurisdictions and multiple levels of government, and there aren't many that can do the things that she can do. And I would be honored to nominate her if somebody would second the nomination and if Councillor Sainsbury would allow us to nominate her. Thanks.
Seconder is Councillor Jebb. Councillor Sainsbury, you accept the nomination?
Thank you, Your Worship. I am surprised, but I thank Councillor Beattie for the nomination.
Okay, thank you. Then the motion will be read, be resolved that the correspondence from the municipal world be received. I've heard that Councillor Fran Sainsbury be nominated for the 2021 Municipal World Women of Influence and Local Government Awards. All in favor? Unanimously, thank you. Thanks, Councillor Beattie. C2. Just moved by Councillor Noyle, second by Councillor Sainsbury. Be resolved that the correspondence from the County of Simcoe dated December 23rd, 2020 be received. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next one is CW2, Councillor Norcross.
Thanks, Your Worship. I just want to acknowledge that our last committee meeting, I brought that up and I had typed an email that I thought I had sent to you, Your Worship. And after the meeting, I realized it was still sitting in my outbox and I had not sent it with the information you had requested from me. So I just wanted to apologize to you and let you know that I did find it afterwards. I'm sorry, my apologies, my mistake. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Moved by Councillor Norcross, sorry, Deputy Mayor Norcross, and second by Councillor Foster. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Now, Councillor CW3-1, Councillor Sainsbury.
Your Worship. Oh.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, Councillor Sainsbury.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a concern because we have a lot of new subdivisions on the books, and just because they're on hold due to lack of water at the present time, many of them are along our rail lines. And we kind of didn't get the report at the end of, I guess it was my fault because I didn't ask for an amendment, but I did ask if the fire chief, if you'll recall, could get us a copy of the insurance and liability policies that Milton and Markham and different people who have ceased the train whistles in urban centers, and how it works for them and what is involved. Because just a few weeks back, we had somebody make a presentation related to subdivision to the north of Main Street, I believe in Ward 3. And they had two triangular patches divided by the railway. And sometime in the future, they wish to do something with that. The MZO lands in Beaton, beside the rail line across from the JOC, there are houses in that particular design that they showed us that would be close to a rail line. And we're either going to have to change how close we put these houses, make them more soundproof, don't put walkout doors that back onto the rail lines and so on. So I think we shouldn't just shut it down. I would like move to receive it and to refer it to the last committee of the whole meeting in March, and see if the CAO and the fire chief could get a small report from Markham and whoever else has done this to see what the insurance, legal agreements, and liability issues are and how they've dealt with them and any costs that may go with that. And the last thing was to see if there have been any incidents since silencing the train whistles in those jurisdictions.
Chief Hayden.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Sainsbury. I did have those comments marked down from the Committee of the Whole meeting on December the 14th. As well, I have outstanding questions that were asked by Councillor Lacey related to the duration of the train whistle as it approached the crossings. So once I've received the answers to my questions, I have reached out to CP Rail to ask whether they monitor those situations, the amount of train whistle, the length of time, duration, etc. The Councillor Lacey Act, then I will bring that back in a supplemental report, including the questions that you had brought up as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Chief
so
Hayden.
just for clarification, your worship, through you to the chief. So it's not totally closed down. We will have further documentation and also address the concerns of Councillor Lacey.
Chief
And
Hayden.
if it's on committee of the whole, then anybody from Tottenham who still had a problem would be able to speak to it. Is that correct?
Chief Hayden.
Through you, your worship, to Councillor Sainsbury, that's correct. It's still an open item as far as I'm concerned. And we
Thank you
will
very much.
bring back
I
the
thought it was
report.
finished tonight because this is council adopting it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Harrison McIntyre, did you wish? Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Moved by Councillor Beattie, second by Councillor Harrison McIntyre, be resolved that the report of fire 2020-03 be received and further that the deputation of Kevin Meisner be received. All in favor? Opposed of any? Thank you. Next one is CW42, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. CW42 was just a couple of council members had pecuniary interest, so we just go with the recommendation.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Jebb, second by Councillor Deputy Mayor Norcross. Be resolved a report of Min 2020-54 be received and further that the events outlined in attachment 1 to report of Min 2020-54 be approved and designated as events of the municipal significance to facilitate organizations and groups in obtaining special occasion permits for a provincial liquor license. And further that the clerk and director of the administration services or designate be authorized to issue letters of approval with respect to the provincial liquor license for the groups and organizations as outlined in attachment 1 to report of Min 2020-54. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And we'll go to our CAO for a verbal report.
Thank you, Mayor Milne. Good evening, Mayor Milne, Deputy Mayor Norcross, and members of council. There's been several, changes to the status as we continue to manage our way through the pandemic. So I wanted to discuss some of those matters with council and bring you up to date with respect to where we are. So as we start 2021, we're obviously hopeful and optimistic that the year ahead will be brighter and better than the last. And notwithstanding our hope and our optimism, it is essential that we all remain diligent in practicing all health directives and related to COVID-19, including wearing a mask, maintaining 2 meters of physical distancing, washing and sanitizing our hands frequently, and staying home when we're ill. We remain in the province-wide shutdown until at least January 23rd, and the full impacts on town services as a result of the shutdown can be viewed on our website. However, having said that, I wanted to update you on a few items. So as physical distancing measures cannot be ensured and equipment is not sanitized, all our outdoor playgrounds are currently closed and signage has been put in place advising any potential users of that. As per the province, our recreation centers must remain closed for the duration of the shutdown. The town hall and joint operations center remain open for staff only and closed for public walk-ins. The financial consequence of the current province-wide shutdown, particularly related to our parks, recreation, and culture area, could mean an estimated approximately $250,000 in lost revenues through ICE revenue, membership dues, drop-ins, and rentals, and things of that nature. Our recreation facilities that are anticipated for that time frame, that became within the shutdown. We continue to monitor the situation and make operational decisions as required and based on efficiency and financial responsibility. As an example, we have removed the indoor ice surface at the Beaton Arena as the facility's primary current use was for ice activities. With the shutdown, it made the best financial sense to remove the ice during the facility closure, eliminating the energy and maintenance costs of having the ice, which equates to approximately $14,000 just for the few weeks that we're in the shutdown. We are working with user groups to understand their plans and needs moving forward after the shutdown, and if necessary, the ice in the Beaton Arena can be reinstated in less than a week. Weather permitting, the outdoor rink at the Tottenham Community and Fitness Center is opened and accessible on a first come, first served basis with rotations starting on the hour. Only leisure skating is permitted with no gameplay of any kind. So there's no hockey or shinny allowed. And that service is being provided from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Face masks and coverings must always be worn. A maximum of 10 skaters are allowed on the ice at any given time, and each skater is permitted a time limit of 55 minutes. All COVID-19 protocols must be adhered to. Initially, we were encountering some challenges with providing this service safely. However, we've reviewed it and we constantly are keeping an eye on things there, but we have since implemented some revisions to better monitor how the rink is being used, and our bylaw and public works teams are patrolling the rink outside of operating hours. Unfortunately, we're aware that other municipalities had to implement more extreme restrictions as a result of people not abiding by public health requirements. We're hopeful that our community and users will use this ice rink as it is permitted to be used during this time so that we may keep it open for the community to safely enjoy. However, we're hopeful that a few unfortunate circumstances don't ruin it for the many, and we have to resort to those tighter restrictions, or like some municipalities end up actually closing the service. We're making every effort to open our man-made outdoor ice rinks made on the ground surfaces of ball diamonds at Donor Diamond in Alliston and at the Beaton Fairgrounds. However, we have yet to see the temperature as cold as needed, which is usually around -10 for consecutive days. In addition to the weather forecast, we'll also continue to monitor the community's willingness to help stop the spread of COVID-19 and follow all health protocols and procedures while utilizing our public spaces. And that's something that's unfortunate, but we are seeing some challenges in continuing to provide those types of services. So finally, residents are reminded that the Tottenham Conservation Area pond, as well as any of our stormwater management ponds, are not safe to be on and are not for skating on at any time. And I can certainly appreciate folks wanting to get out and do all they possibly can to enjoy the winter weather, but those areas really are not designed for being on and could prove to be dangerous. So our bylaw team will be monitoring these areas to remind anyone seen using any ponds for ice skating activities that is not safe, nor is it permitted. So given the closure of our town recreational facilities and the associated financial impacts, which we are monitoring very closely, we have had to make some unfortunate decisions with respect to staffing levels. Some staff have been redeployed to other areas where they can be used more wisely, and we have had to temporarily reduce some staffing related to those services that are not currently permitted. We will continue to monitor the financial impacts of the shutdown to ensure that the town is always providing the very best value to its residents. And unfortunately, some of those decisions are not easy to make. But again, our priorities from the start are to continue to keep our staff as safe as we possibly can and to continue to provide the best value to our residents. So we understand that there may be an update from the provincial government announced tomorrow morning, and we will respond accordingly. It will be interesting to see where the province takes us, given where the numbers are. However, notwithstanding any policy that the provincial government may choose to put in place, the success really depends on the people, every single person doing their part and abiding by those public health instructions. And I can't stress that enough to members of our community. What we've seen over the past while is, notwithstanding the policy decisions that higher levels of government have implemented, the numbers are still continue to go in the wrong direction. And that really comes down to a willingness to abide by those instructions. In a lot of cases, they're not meant as a suggestion. They're meant as a mandatory thing that we all have to follow, every single one of us. So again, notwithstanding the policy that the province or the federal government may put in place, success really lies in the hands of each and every one of us to do our part and follow those health instructions. In conclusion, I just encourage everyone to continue to follow the town's website and social media accounts for accurate information on the impacts to our services, and continue to remain diligent, follow the health instructions, because as I say, I can't stress enough that it really lies in the hands of each and every one of us to do our part. So with that, Mayor Milne, I'll turn things back to you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions from members of council.
Thank you very much, CAO Parker. Councillor Lacey?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to start by saying to CAO Parkin and actually the staff that they've done an excellent job at the Tottenham Arena, the outdoor arena, trying to help get staff or get the residents on the ice and managing that. It's been extremely difficult, as I can tell you, but they've done an excellent job. I did have a question. Is there any signage around the pond about unsafe ice? Because I don't know if everybody is either on social media or that. It looks like people have been kind of walking on it or skiing on it. And if we had some signage up there, it might help as well.
I'll go to Director Burton.
Through you, Mayor Milne, to Councillor Lacey. That's correct. There is some signage at the spillway currently, and there's additional signage that's currently being fabricated to be installed around the perimeter of that water area.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Deputy Mayor Norcross.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to touch on what Councillor Lacey just said, had quite a few people reach out to me, and I realize now that with our arenas closed and we only have the one outdoor facility with maximum 10 people, there's not a lot of places to skate. So it seems that people are taking advantage of the Tottenham Conservation and of course our storm ponds where you have snow sitting on side of ice, which acts as an insulator, and they're not safe. So I just want to ensure that the town has been excellent at their social media posts and putting it out there. I just wonder if there's something else we should be doing, Director Burton, putting up small snow fences with warning signs, increasing signage, making sure that we look at the storm ponds that we have in the municipality as a whole, and just making sure we're keeping people or doing our due diligence to keep people off those ponds and those temporary skating facilities that they're turning them into. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Director Burton, feedback, please.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Milne, to Deputy Mayor Norcross. Between myself and Director Horn, we are continuously reviewing the stormwater management ponds and the TCA property itself. And there is currently signage identifying no skating within the stormwater management pond areas. However, we may wish to have some discussions on some additional due diligence, as you suggested, for consideration.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks, Your Worship.
Any other questions to the CEO? I have a motion in moved by Councillor Noyle, second by Councillor Sainsbury. Be resolved that the verbal report of the CAO be received. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Beattie and second by Councillor Foster. Be resolved that the following bylaws be read a first, second, and third time and enacted. Bylaw 2021-01, 2021-02, 2021-03, 2021-04, 2021-05, 21-06, and 21-07. Any questions on the bylaws? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And we'll take a 5-minute break that Pam gets. Oh, but yes, we're due. There's a public planning meeting scheduled for this Wednesday, January 13th at 7 p.m. And due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting will be conducted using Zoom video conferencing. You're welcome to review the agenda on the town website. Okay. And then the motion. Confirmation one. Motion moved by Councillor Harrison McIntyre, second by Councillor Jebb. Be it resolved at the bylaw 2021-008 to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting on January 11th, 2021. Be read a first, second, third time enacted. All in favor? Carried. And Councillor Jebb, be it resolved that the meeting adjourns at
7:31, Your Worship.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. We'll take a 5-minute break. Let Pam get things set over to next. Thank you. Go to the clerk to identify items to add or delete. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are no items to add or delete the agenda.
Good, thank you. Moved by Councillor Lacey and second by Councillor McClellan that the agenda for the Committee of the Whole meeting held on January 11, 21 be confirmed as circulated. All in favor? Carried, thank you. At this time, if you have a peculiar interest, you can claim it now or when the item comes up. Councillor Jeb.
Thank you, Your Worship. CW42, support the ViaNet Inc.'s enhanced broadband services. I have a pecuniary interest. They have their antenna on top of our grain elevator.
Good. Thank you. Anyone else? At this time, I'll go back to the clerk to identify items for separate discussion and the reason thereof.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have item CW21, Accessibility Advisory Committee Summary Report dated December 9th, 2020, as it's a recommendation. We have CW41, Corporate Asset Management Plan 2020, presentation. CW42, Support for ViaNet Inc.'s Enhanced Broadband Services. Councillor Jeb has pecuniary interest. CW51, Application for Zoning Bylaw Amendment, NAK Building Services Limited, care of Caroline Baker, Baker Planning Group, 24 Mill Street, Community of Tottenham, file number DEV 399, as we have 3 members of the public that would like to speak. We also have C-S-1, verbal report of the CAO closed, reinvesting in Canada infrastructure program update, verbal report, and CS2, verbal report of the CAO closed, New Tecumseh Improvement Society.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. At this time, I'll go to council for items for separate discussion. And Councillor Lacey.
Just CW512, please.
Thank you. Councillor Beatty.
CW43, please, Your Worship.
Thank you. And I did see another one come up there. Councillor Harrison McIntyre.
Thank you, Your Worship. CW52.
Okay, back again.
52, thank you. Anyone else? All right. Moved by Deputy Mayor Norcross, second by Councillor Noel, that all items not identified for separate discussion be received and the recommendation therein be recommended to council for adoption. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. First item is CW21. Moved by Councillor Sainsbury, second by Councillor Beatty, that the Accessibility Advisory Committee summary report dated December 9th, 2020 be received, and a recommendation that staff be directed to reach out to the taxi companies within New Tecumseh on behalf of New Tecumseh Accessibility Advisory Committee to investigate the possibility of providing wheelchair accessible vehicles and bring a report back to the Committee of the Whole with respect to the findings and what other options are available regarding the wheelchair accessible transportation. Questions? Councillor Sainsbury.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was wondering about how working with the County of Simcoe related to the van they have at Beaton Manor, or if they have one at Matthew's house, it may give them some income for the use of the vehicles as well, if it could be scheduled along to fit into their schedules when this study is being done.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jeb.
I'm glad Councillor Sainsbury brought that up because I had requested that last term of council if the bus at the manor could be used on weekends and at a nominal fee for the residents in New Tecumseh to be able to use that accessible van. And we never heard back from them. So maybe that could be added to the request that we could find out from Matthew's house in Simcoe Manor or Simcoe County about the use of that van and bus.
I think when the deputy mayor and I was up there, I believe when we brought it onto the floor, they couldn't get qualified drivers to drive, and that was one of their challenges. And Deputy Mayor, if there's anything else, I'm trying to remember back to last year about that. I know we discussed it at the county.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. We did bring it up with the county and we introduced it. And we're also looking to see if the bus could be used in some way to accommodate the residents in Tottenham too, Your Worship. You're right, they were having trouble finding qualified drivers. My understanding though, it was still in play. They just haven't been able to address the situation yet. So if it's the pleasure of Councillor Jebb, His Worship, we actually, our first county council meeting is back tomorrow. We could certainly raise the issue again and report back to council.
Thank you. Councillor Jebb.
That would be great. Seeing as children aren't riding a school bus, I'm sure there's a lot of bus drivers out there sitting at home that would maybe be willing to drive the bus and receive some type of income for it. So that would be maybe an option to work with the school bus drivers that aren't driving right now. It'd be good. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. No, we'll certainly bring that up. I know one of the concerns was to make sure they could find long-term drivers because they were hesitant to get in a situation, provide a certain level of service, and then not be able to maintain that on a long existing purpose to the community. So, but certainly, Councillor Jebb, we will raise that issue again and we'll report back to you. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Anyone else? All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. CW42.
CW41.
41. Accessibility.
CW41 corporate assets. Management plan. Presentation.
That's right. So we have a CW41, and at this time, Council, we're going to ask Arun, and I hope I pronounce your name right, Chilele, to make a report regards to the asset management. And did Lori, did you want to start it off, or did you? Okay.
Can you hear me?
We can see you. Thanks, Arun. We'll be gentle with you.
Okay. I can't see my presentation, so I'm not sure.
Sorry, Your Worship. I thought the Director of Finance was saying something. So I'll share my screen now. Thank you.
Next slide. Good evening, Your Worship, Deputy Mayor, Council, staff, and audience. I'm Arun Chulil, Manager of Corporate Assets at the Town of New Tecumseth. I'm pleased to present our Corporate Asset Management Plan to you tonight. The Corporate Asset Management Plan establishes the general framework used to develop detailed plans broken down by service area. Over the past year, we have collected the inventory of our assets, established replacement costs, and identified asset age, which we will initially use to evaluate the condition of the asset. This corporate asset management plan also defines levels of service, asset risk, and financing options to fund maintenance and replacement activity for each of the asset categories. We have also implemented a new technology called Assetic Predictor to assist with analyzing and reporting various asset management results, as well as work order system called CityWorks to assign and record the maintenance work performed on each asset. The previous corporate asset management plan was consultant-driven back in 2013. The town is now working on specific detailed asset management plans by service area. Phase 1 will include water, wastewater, stormwater, and transportation. Each service area will identify unique, detailed maintenance strategies, life cycle costing events, risk factors, funding gaps, and revised asset condition based on inspection. Phase 2 will focus on parks and recreation, fire, fleet, and facilities. The town was successful in acquiring a $50,000 grant from Federation of Canadian Municipalities to be used to develop and train these plans. Next, I would like to present the state of our local infrastructure. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. The total replacement value of town's assets stands at $1.4 billion. 87% of the replacement value comes from the core infrastructure assets comprised of transportation assets, reservoirs and wells, treatment plants, buried infrastructure for water, wastewater, and stormwater. The largest category is transportation services at 33%, followed by water, wastewater, stormwater. This category is referred to as linear assets. The balance of assets are 13% are referred to as vertical assets. Now I would like to highlight some of the other categories. Next slide. Transportation services. The replacement value of transportation assets is $453 million. Most assets are in good to very good condition with 19 million, roughly 5% of the assets in poor condition. Moderate investment is required to keep these assets in good condition. Next slide. Water. The replacement value of water assets is $177 million. About 35 million, roughly 20% of assets in poor condition. Most of the poor assets are the above ground assets like reservoirs, pumps, wells, etc., as these have shorter lifespan than the buried assets. Next slide. Wastewater. Wastewater services has a replacement value of $407 million. About 26 million, roughly 6% of the assets are poor to very poor condition. Most of the poor assets are again the above ground infrastructure in the wastewater treatment plants and sewer stations. Significant investment is required in order to keep the above ground infrastructure of water and wastewater in a state of good repair. Next slide. Parks and recreation. The replacement value for parks and recreation services is 18 million, which includes washroom facilities, playgrounds, play fields and play courts, etc. About 6 million, with roughly 1/3 of the assets are in poor to very poor condition as they have shorter lifespan and require investments. Next slide. Facilities. The replacement value of facilities is 143 million, which includes all the town's facilities. About 32 million, roughly 22% of these assets are in poor to very poor condition, and major investment is required for facilities and infrastructure within the facility. Next slide. So here is the Ontario Regulation 588/17, the timelines and funding. The town is obligated to develop asset management plans as part of the OREG 588/17 in order to receive provincial and federal funding for capital investments. In 2019, Council approved the Strategic Asset Management Policy, which was useful in developing our asset management plans. The town is on track to develop the detailed asset management plans required in Phase 1, which are due on June 30th, 2021. we have been able to integrate the roads need study, the bridge condition assessment, drainage study, water master plans when we develop the asset repository in GIS and models in the ascetic predictor tool. We have also defined the roles and responsibilities of the council and senior management through asset governance by having an executive leadership team and steering team and communicating with them on an ongoing basis. Phase 2 assets are required in 2023. We have collected significant data and are positioned to complete the plans prior to the due date. Asset management is a continual exercise to adapt to a municipality's changing priorities and resources. We will continue to refine asset management into the future. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you very much, Varun. A great presentation. Thank you. Councillor Sainsbury.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Arun, I have two questions. One is on his page 2 of 161 pages of his wonderful report. It took a long time to read it. All of the things are spelled out like transportation, water, wastewater facilities, and so on, but always culture gets left out. We have parks, recreation, and it never says culture, but we have 3 libraries and we have our museum and our log cabin and so on. So from now on, I just wondered if in the category and if the pie charts, it could have the culture piece of pie.
Yes, I have put in the culture. It is under the category facilities.
Oh, you've included it that way. I saw that it said that the culture section was $2 million for replacement and poor to very poor condition, 2 million. So does that mean we have to replace everything?
So
that's what confused me.
No, so basically those are age-based. So that's why I put it as this one. We need to revise when it came to facilities and parks, we did not have a robust, I went by age-based condition. So when I looked at those, they were bought way back in 30 years back, 40 years back. That's why they reflected as poor condition. But we need to look through that and see when I come up with a more condition-based assessment.
Well, with the museum, for instance, and with the library, the books are the main asset. The rest is the facility, which is the actual physical structure. At the museum, we have the physical building, but we also have all of the artifacts and so on, which have great value. And if we'd ever had a disaster of some kind, we would have to try somehow to replace them from that era, 1800s or 1900s.
So
yes,
I just went by the building envelope when it came to museums, and we didn't go into the artifacts and things like that.
Right, because they would have to be replaced as well and added to, so that we keep getting better collections and so on.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mayor Milne. Through you to Aaron. It's a fascinating report. I just would like to just delve a little further into the 2 comments you made, and I was just flipping to the pages. If you go to the Parks and Recreation, you covered off a few numbers, but I'd just like to cover them off again. In the Parks and Recreation, there's the total value of assets is $19 million. A full 32% of those are in poor to very poor condition. And if you go to the facilities, there are $143 million in assets. And quoting from your report, 79% are rated at fair to good, and 21% are considered poor to very poor, at a total of $21 million. Those are staggering statistics. So I just wanted to draw those to everyone's attention more so than what you had originally indicated. And there's obviously more details in the report, but that certainly puts us in an interesting position. Thank you very much for all your work on the report.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Anyone else? All right. Once again, Arun, a great job. A lot of work went into it, and it was good reading that. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Beattie, second by Councillor Foster, that report of CS 2020-07 be received, and further that the asset management presentation be received, and further that the corporate asset management plan, asset information, and asset risk strategy be approved. Any questions? All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Next is CW42, and Councillor Jeb has a conflict. Moved by Councillor Harrison McIntyre, seconded by Councillor Lacey, that the report of CS 2021-02 be received and further that the council support the efforts made by VanNet Inc. to apply for provincial and federal grants under the Improving Connectivity for Ontario and Universal Broadband Fund, thereby enhancing the rural broadband services through the town of New Tecumseth. Questions? All in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. CW43 and Councillor Beatty.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just one question through to staff. Regarding page 193 of 261, it was one of the two large 11 by 17s that were blown up, thank God, so I could see it. But one thing I couldn't see on this list was Faulkner Park anywhere. And I know that there was an environmental work done in the previous year, so it would be, I think it should be on this sheet. So I'm just wondering why it's not included.
Director Burton.
Through you, Mayor Milne, to Councillor Beatty. I can't speak to why it doesn't appear on these sheets. However, I can tell you that Faulkner Park is both budgeted for design in 2020 and the construction was included in the 2021 capital plan. So that project is proceeding if that answers your question.
It does. Thank you very much, Director Burton. I'm just wondering if we could get, because the cost of that project will change the outcome of all these numbers. So I just wondered if we could get a new one for the council meeting with this project included in the list. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right. I'll go Harrison McIntyre.
Thank you, Your Worship. While Director Burton's around and answering questions, can we get a quick update on the Tottenham Library and where it's at?
Director Burton.
Through you, Mayor Milne, to Councillor Harrison McIntyre. As it relates to the Tottenham Library, the project has reached substantial completion. All of the furniture has been delivered. It has now been turned over to the library services for setup of their collection and moving of their staff and that. Obviously, with the closure, we've postponed any sort of grand opening or opening parameters, but we do look forward to something once we come out of lockdown and are able to open our buildings up to our residents.
That's good news. Councillor Foster, I believe you had your card up there.
Did. Thank you, Mayor Milne. Through you to the Director of Economic Development. Referring to page 182 of 261, there's a comment under the variances. And the comment says, November variances are in line with the explanations above, but slightly higher due to consulting work anticipated to continue in December, which is referring to the previous December. I get an explanation of what that consulting work is and exactly what sort of work happened in December or continued on in December.
Okay, go to our EDC.
I'm sorry, Councillor Foster, could you repeat which piece you're looking at?
Sure can. It's page 182, or actually it's page 2 of the year-end forecast and budget variance report, and it's under the Economic and Development and Communications forecasted net year-end variance. And it refers to a 25% favorable variance in the last 2 lines. Whereas I read November variances are in line with the explanations above, but slightly higher due to consulting work anticipated to continue in December. Just was looking for an explanation of what that consulting work is. And that obviously, if it's anticipated to continue in December, it must have started in November. So if I could just get an explanation, or council could, I'd appreciate it.
Darcy Brooks.
Through to Councillor Foster, you'll have to forgive me. I'll have to double check that and get back to council on that. The item that comes to mind is perhaps some of the funding that was provided to Nottawasaga Futures for their business consulting program that would continue through the end of the year. But I'll have to double check the specifics of that.
Good, thank you.
Through the chair, I may be able to assist a little bit.
Okay. Mr. Henry,
just taking a quick peek. The actual report refers to development, economic development, and communications. So I believe there was some work that was planned for some strategy work and some marketing work on both sides, economic development and communications, that probably didn't either receive invoices until later on in December. The work wasn't conducted until December, which would be the reason for the variance between November and the end of the year.
Thank you. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Director Henry. If you could just, after the meeting, just confirm that with Mr. Brooke Bishop and confirm that that is the reason for those comments, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you kindly.
Anyone else? Motion then moved by Deputy Mayor Norcross, second by Councillor Noyle, that the report of PIN 2021-01 be received. I'll go to clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. And further, that staff be directed to bring back an additional information memorandum. Information memorandum to the next regular meeting of council, including Faulkner Park within the capital project status, and to provide clarification with regard to the economic development and communications budget.
Thank you. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Next one is CW 51. And we'll go to I'll put the motion on the floor and then we can talk about it. The report of PD 2021-01 be received, and further that a bylaw be enacted to amend the zoning bylaw of 2014-126 subsequently in the forms included in attachment number 1 to report PD 2021-01, and moved by Councillor Sainsbury and second by Councillor Beattie. Our first speaker is Caroline Baker from Baker Planning Group. Ms. Baker, would you wish to go ahead?
Good evening, Your Worship and committee. If it's all right, I tried to turn my video on, but I believe I'm restricted. So whichever is your preferred protocol, please let me know. Oh, I apologize. There's the request. Thank you. Good evening. Always a new experience, isn't it? Not seeing faces. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time this evening and having this application on the committee's agenda. As mentioned, my name is Caroline Baker from Baker Planning Group, and I'm representing NAK Building Services, the owner of the subject property at 27 Mill Street East. I just wanted to quickly provide a bit of an update and response from the last time we were all together. The public meeting was held on August 26th of last year. And further to comments received from members of the public, and I think an overall good discussion that we had, the applicant submitted a revised building elevations and response package in October of last year. And then building upon that, town staff have prepared a staff report recommending approval. The response submission that came into the town generally addressed 5 areas, and those are just what I want to focus on tonight. The first, we did receive feedback on the building design. And if committee has in front of them in their package, the applicant with their architect, again, who's available this evening, has revised the architectural style of the building, indicating a reuse of the existing brick from the existing structure, and adding more heritage elements through the roof pitch, the type of windows, window details, adding more windows to the side elevations. And as well, the owner is in agreement to add a plaque indicating the heritage of the site on the property. It's my understanding through the town planning department that heritage staff have provided comments that they support the application and the revised building elevations. The second topic area we spoke of at the public meeting was site servicing. And there has been follow-up discussions between Van Harten, the applicant's engineer, and the town's engineering staff. And it's my understanding that town staff are recommending support of the application. There were concerns noted regarding flooding, and I did want to comment that under provincial and local guidelines, stormwater is not allowed to exit off of the development property onto adjacent properties. Stormwater has to be entirely and wholly contained on the development site and allocated towards the sewers. The third piece was traffic. We did have discussion about traffic patterns in the neighborhood. Those were sent to the transportation engineer, who's also on the call tonight should there be any specific transportation questions. And in his professional opinion, a lot of the comments regarding traffic concerns and patterns relate to internal neighborhood circulation matters. This development site benefits from being located on Mill Street East, which is the most direct and convenient connection through the community. And if this were to be approved and residents would live in the homes, there would be no reason, unless they were visiting a friend or family member, to drive internally through the neighborhoods. It would take them longer. And traffic studies have long shown, as humans, we always take the shortest and fastest route possible. And really, the average annual daily flows on Mill Street are higher than existing. They're substantially higher even in the forecasted future, and with the addition of this development. But certainly, John is the transportation expert, and I'll defer to him if there's more detailed comments. The next piece, I know it came up about a previous application on this property for a severance, I believe around 2003, and then that was refused at the OMB. I just wanted to provide some commentary that I'm sure, as you're all aware, there has been a complete shift in land use planning over the last 17 years, from the province all the way down through to the municipality, on a variety of important factors, from climate change, protecting agricultural land and our food resources, optimizing infrastructure, sustainable financing for municipalities, and much more support for infill and intensification. And really, when we look at the policy framework, we consider all of these pillars in one package. We don't sort of pick one policy and not the other. The way provincial policy and the town official plan is to read is to be as one fulsome planning document, and assessing in that regard. And then I just wanted to touch briefly on compatibility. I know this was brought up at the public meeting and addressed in the town staff report. Sometimes this term can be a bit confusing, but in terms of land use planning and planning policies, compatibility is not meant to mean the same. It's meant to mean two uses that can coexist in a compatible manner without negative impacts. So as planners, we look at things: flooding, shadows, traffic, privacy, overlook. It's not necessarily that if you have a semi, you only have a semi next door. And through all the submitted documents and technical studies, one of the main intents was to show no negative impact on the community, engineering and traffic and the orientation of the units and the setbacks. So I just wanted to add that in there, but I'm certainly here along with the rest of the team to answer any questions that committee may have this evening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Baker. And we have Ken Parks. Are you on, Ken?
Through your worship, I can try emailing them and see if maybe they just walked away from their camera.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Ken. Sorry.
Can you see me now?
No, we can't see you.
Oh, I think we have the same problem as Baker. There we are. Thank you, Mayor Milne, Deputy Mayor Norcross, Council, for the opportunity to speak this evening. For the purpose of consolidation of concerns and the respect for everyone's time, I was speaking on behalf of the concerned residents, both within the immediate area and those that have signed the petition opposing the application, which approximates 220 right now. In the prior August 26 meeting, we expressed significant concerns and interest on a number of issues. These included heritage and history. The home of 27 Mill Street was occupied by John Totten and his wife, Charlotte, who Tottenham was named after the Totten family. Traffic volumes and safety. The previous intensification of 27 Mill Street East saw the severance of a lot off the original property and the construction of a duplex, as well as the original home itself was reconfigured as a legal duplex. And the significant water drainage issues within the area due to topography and the high water table. Ms. Baker spoke about topography and drain off, but we haven't heard anything with respect to the high water table. We also know this property at an earlier date appeared before the OMB and was denied a severance in the main due to being out of character for the area. And I don't know whether council has in fact gone to legal counsel to see the briefs that were made and the information that was provided to the OMB chairman at the time, because there would have been similar arguments that we suspect or suggest should be made in this case, and that concluded what was being applied for was out of character for the neighborhood, and that argument still lives today. There's, however, one issue we would like to speak to, and we'll start with an apology to the women on council and to the women online. It would seem that we have applied some male bias to our earlier presentation. We focused on John Totten and his association for the naming of Tottenham. His wife, however, was accomplished in her own right. At her funeral in 1932, not one but 5 ministers spoke at the service. They did so to ensure her contributions to the community were recognized. In addition, it was noted that Ms. Charlotte Burke Totten gave 43 years of efficient, dedicated leadership to the Women's Missionary Institute. This is an organization run out of the U.S., but has worldwide connections. So her contribution was not just localized, but was international in nature. The home suggested for demolition, which by the way, currently is home to 2 families, has a rich history both applied to Mr. John Totten and Ms. Charlotte Burke Totten. Heritage value does not just go to structure, it goes to the history of who lived in there. Case in point, the Banting homestead. If Frederick Banting lived in a shack, it would still be standing today. In continuing, we wish, however, to bring to council's attention our concerns around the proposal that impact the neighborhood as a whole. This neighborhood is mostly comprised of century homes that have been maintained with respect to their and the town's heritage. This neighborhood is just one of many within Tottenham, Beaton, and Alliston that stand out as being distinct and expressing unique character that the owners value, cherish, and protect. And it's not just current owners that see these areas as important to the town. Visitors and many new residents have made many very positive comments to me and neighbors about our homes as they walk within the town, after a ride on the steam train, a visit to the conservation area, or just a walk up from the many new area subdivisions. At the heart of our concern is the proposal before us is not a fit for or complementary to what exists. It is, in our respective opinion, out of character for the area. It overwhelms what exists and will become the neighborhood, thereby diminishing what it has existed and protected for over 100 years. We wonder where the town's vision is regarding infill and heritage. Other towns and regions have such a published plan. One such policy paper has been thoughtfully produced by the region of Waterloo. That document is entitled Infill, New Construction in Heritage Neighborhoods. Within the introduction, it states, and I quote, infill housing is new construction on available site with a historic or mature neighborhood. Mature neighborhoods often have a distinct architectural character. This is the result of geographic and climate conditions, local building techniques and materials, and the styles for the period during which they were built. A sensitive infill project will be sympathetic to the existing architecture of the neighborhood, while providing new residential developments to take advantage of the existing infrastructure. Ideally, an infill project will use existing open space and will not require the demolition of a building. The design of the new construction should be compatible with the existing streetscape to conserve the neighbor's heritage and heritage character by adopting appropriate building styles, profiles, massing, and materials. It also identifies in detail the elements of a successful infill design. These include setback, orientation, scale, proportion, rhythm, massing, height, materials, color, roof shape, details, and ornamentation, landscape features, secondary buildings, and parking.
You got 1 minute left, Ken.
I should be clear. I thought, given the fact that I was speaking for a group, I would be given some leeway with respect to a bit of time. I will proceed as quickly as possible. What in essence we have in the case of what in essence we have in our case, transference, merely the cut and paste of a 5-link townhome complex onto 27 Mill Street. In fact, that is exactly what is being constructed within the new subdivision fronting onto Mill Street East and Turner Street, just east of the application. It is if a 5-unit townhome is being lifted onto a flatbed, transported a few blocks west to 27 Mill Street and dropped down. We are sure that is not what infill and heritage neighborhood is meant to be. Waterloo region gets that, and I think we should too. I have checked what is being proposed does not exist in the older areas and surrounding towns. I've looked in Newmarket, Schaumburg, Nobleton, Kleinburg, and Orangeville. I obviously included Beaton and Alliston. Why breaking new ground on century-old ground in Tottenham is appropriate has us confused and disappointed. I listened intently to Ms. Baker's presentation. She was calm and professional. She represented her client as one would expect. She has done what she is hired to do, support her client's business interests. Those interests we summarized to maximize his return on investment. There's nothing wrong with this. It is his right to do so. However, there can be more than one position in such case. As an example, if Ms. Baker had a sister and that same sister was also a planner, and we hired her to be our representative in this proposal, I'm sure she would do so with calmness and professionalism, and I believe would be able to diminish the arguments of her sister. My intention is not to initiate a family dispute, but to rather point out that planning is not an exact science. It is subject to interpretation. The language within the policy and regulations governing planning are saturated with words like may, shall, and recommended, and not with words like will, must, or without exception. There is such a thing in law as intent and unintended consequences. We think the latter applies here. We think, therefore, that the town should interpret these policies and regulations that balance growth and intensification with respect for heritage and the look, feel, character, and safety of our neighborhood. We would like to raise one more issue that has to do with safety and traffic control. The new linked townhomes that have been constructed at Mill Street East and Turner front onto Mill Street. However, they have their own access road, Clifford Crescent. None of them back directly onto Mill Street. They do not have to drive over the sidewalk on Mill Street to access Mill Street. In front of that access road is a small boulevard, then the Mill Street sidewalk, another larger boulevard, and then Mill Street. Their safety and the safety of immediate residents has been prioritized. This is not the case in the applicant's proposal. All 5 driveways access Mill Street directly with the need to pass over the Mill Street sidewalk. And we ask ourselves, Why is our safety being considered with lesser priority? We feel is a bit of a slap and not a slap on the back. Heaven forbid, there is an accident here, and heaven forbid it's a child who is the many children running up and down the street on their bikes and trikes and scooters and skateboards. And if an accident happens, an injury lawyer will be there before an ambulance, and everybody is going to get sued, including me, because I'm driveway number 6. And that's not fear-mongering, that's just today's reality. In summary, then we note, where is the vision for infill and heritage in Tecumseth? We are demolishing a home that currently houses 2 families and has a rich heritage history. The proposal has significant real safety concerns. If the application is approved, we believe every old house on any corner lot in Tottenham, Beacon, or Ralston will be scrutinized by developers. The door is open. I'll leave it there and I'll await any questions. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you, Ken. Any questions to Mr. Parks? All right, our next speaker is Kathy.
Frank.
Yeah, I was going to take council's question after everybody speaks, the public. Is Kathy still?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm just, again, I think all of us don't have video.
I thought Mr. Fryette was going to speak.
Okay, Kathy, we got that.
Okay, so I'm also one of the neighbors and one of the individuals who signed the petition that was spoken about. I did submit a couple of letters, one back in August and one back for the December meeting. I'm not sure if people received copies for them, but for the sake of time, I don't want to read that word for word. A lot of the points do highlight what's been spoken of. I think a lot of the concerns is more on a precedent setting type of thing. I guess some of my points were, it surprises me that the historical committee didn't have more to say, that they're okay with a plaque and a couple of bricks that aren't confirmed but may be used. And I think the precedent is that what's going to happen to all of our century homes. So in time, will we all be okay with saying, you know, save a couple of bricks, put a plaque up, and there's your history of Tottenham or New Tecumseth. So that was kind of one concern that I think a lot of us are feeling. I think just the fact, as was alluded, so over 200 people have signed this petition. If you look at the community surrounding that home, you can imagine that it's not just the people who live beside this, but a very wider, broad sector that are feeling concern over the proposal. The transportation, so just to go back to Ms. Baker's points, and I don't know, I think she said the transportation person is here. That transportation person obviously has not spent a lot of time in this community. The quickest route is not Mill Street. Because of all of the development that has gone in, single lane at a 4-way stop, people do not want to wait to take Mill Street. They take the internal road. So I live on Richmond Street, and I can tell you it's not just during the rush hour time, but it is a constant battle with ongoing increased speeders going down the road to quickly avoid that 4-way stop. So I think that's a big concern for us. We've had neighbors who have worked with our local councillor to try and get this resolved. At the last meeting, I thought it was interesting that Deputy Mayor Norcross actually brought up a point about the fact that, you know, the policing, the traffic policing bills or ticket quotas are way lower for New Tecumseth than the surrounding area. So we're not even necessarily seeing, you know, what the concern is. And also, I think the traffic report that was done, I think it's clear that it was done during COVID. I mean, I still see a lot of extra traffic even during COVID, but it would be nice for people to do a week-long, a month-long investigation as to what the traffic really looks at. And again, I know we're not looking at 100 new homes into the area that's going to make a major impact, but we seem to keep moving ahead without fixing the problems first. So I think until, we have some resolution, it doesn't make sense to keep adding to those issues. Some of the things like the water that was brought up, and I know obviously that, it states that you're not supposed to have runoff. We've mentioned before, and I believe these surrounding roads are some of the oldest sewers in the area, just because of the nature that these are the oldest streets in the area. So I believe they are slated for an upgrade, but as it currently stands, the majority of the roads on their own without, bringing in more development are higher than our actual properties. So we already see runoff regardless the way things are. So again, until those issues are fixed, I'm not sure why we would add to those issues. And I guess my last point is just about infill and planning. We've seen some changes even with the new developments that have gone in, where, originally they were slated to have, some additional structures outside of homes, and then that falls through, and now we see more homes going in. There's no shortage of townhomes in Tottenham. There's an absolute influx that has been built in those very 3 large developments. So it's not like there's a need for more townhomes. I appreciate the need for rental. I think there's very, very few rental options. I guess my question to council is, what guarantee is it that the owner will have to keep these properties as rental and not want to decide to change them into, houses that are for sale down the road? There was also some suggestions by council at the last meeting for the developer to maybe consider putting 4 townhouses instead of 5. I don't think that's being considered in the new plans. Again, I certainly appreciate all the work that Ms. Baker has put into this, but I look at those plans, I don't see a Victorian home at all. I see townhomes that look pretty much exactly like the ones that are further east on Mill Street, the new development. If you want to see like really good Victorian ones, I think some suggestions were made. Kleinbird, Uxbridge has done some really nice, where it really blends into the existing. And I don't know if those types of things have been considered.
Yeah, 1 more minute, Kathy.
Yeah, I'm wrapping it up. I guess for me, I would like that the town really considers, what do you want our area to look like 20 years from now, 50 years from now? And it goes back to that precedent setting. If we start to demolish and change the history, the century homes, in 20 to 50 years, we're just going to have cookie cutter homes throughout, and you're going to lose, all of what Councillor Sainsbury's talked about, that's at the museum, and maybe that's the only place you're going to see evidence that these types of things existed. So I thank you for your time and for listening to me.
Thank you, Kathy. Any questions to the speaker? No. Thank you very much, Kathy. The next speaker was James Bryant.
Your worship, they're only there to answer.
Right, I'm muted now, and I think and if the host would like to at least the video, I can come on video. Your worship, members of council, yes, thank you for this evening. I've actually been invited here to answer questions, so I don't have a specific presentation to make. So if there are questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Thank you very much. Thanks, James. Nice seeing you again. I believe Ms. Baker did say that they had their traffic control person with them tonight. I was wondering if they could come on. I know one of the questions was asked when the traffic count was done, and was it with the COVID or before the COVID?
Thank you, Your Worship. My name is John Northcote. I am the traffic engineer for JD Engineering. So we did the traffic impact study or the traffic brief for this property. And although the study was done in 2020, the counts and the data from those counts was taken from the road needs study, the township road needs study, which was from 2018. So the counts were all done and the data is all done from prior to COVID. So it doesn't take COVID numbers into consideration. It was all done prior to that. So there was projections going forward that we looked at based on future development in the area to make sure we're looking at the proper traffic volumes in the future, but it was all prior to COVID.
Good. Thank you very much, John. And now, Councillor Lacey.
Thank you, Your Worship. First, I want to thank all of the speakers. They brought up some excellent points. I wanted to reiterate a few points that actually were brought up by Ken and Kathy. And the first one is the area in itself has a very deep history. It's the only section within Tottenham where we have the century homes. You know, they're sort of scattered on Mill Street as well as Queen Street, but that's that section of area that's the oldest part of actual Tottenham. This house in itself, as Mr. Parks brought up, housed Mr. Totten and his wife Charlotte as well, who had significant input into the history within Tottenham and actually the naming within the family. So, you know, it's sad to see that we would be trying to get rid of, you know, something that's so significant within the town. It may not be within the Heritage Committee, but it is a significant housing within the community. The second is the out of character. So the neighborhood itself is a bunch of century homes. They're older homes. They might be converted into a duplex similar to this one. They're large homes. It shows a bit of a character to the town and that old town feel that you see. We have a lot of homes within Tottenham now. A lot of new areas, and each of them has its own little unique sort of feel to it. And I'd hate to see Mill Street, you know, change that feel. It's got that exact old town feel to it that everybody likes to see and to do it. And for that, I'd like to actually say that, you know, I'm going to vote no against this. I don't think we should be converting this into townhomes. I think we should be keeping the home as it is.
Thank you. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mayor Milne. Through you to I believe it's Mr. Northcote, the traffic engineer. I just read with interest about your traffic study, and I'm going to read something from your report. It says, as such, the brief and letter conclude the additional traffic generated by the proposed development will not adversely affect the traffic capacity on Mill Street East or result in any traffic safety issues within the study area. I would ask you to please explain to council how you determined that backing out onto Mill Street would qualify for the statement to say and result in any traffic safety issues within the study area. I'm just trying to understand your rationale and thinking for saying that when you're backing out of driveways onto arguably a fairly busy street.
Mr. Norcott?
Through you, Your Worship. Yeah, so when we look at the conditions along this road, what we look at is the capacity of that road, how much capacity and how much traffic volume is going on along that road, and then the movements that need to go onto that road and how unusual those movements are compared to the rest of the road. So when we looked at that, we look along Mill Street and see that there are residential driveways along that area, and that as drivers go along that area, they would be expecting that type of movement to be coming in. It's not an unusual movement to come onto the road. And we also looked at the amount of time between vehicles in the peak hour to see how much time there would be for someone to back in or back out of a driveway along there. So when we looked at that amount of traffic volume and the amount of space between those gaps between the vehicles, we found that there was enough time for a vehicle to enter the road safely, given the amount of traffic that's on the road.
Supplementary, if I could.
Supplementary.
I guess what I'm looking for you to confirm is that 5 houses backing out 3 times in the morning, 3 times at night, 365 days, in your interpretation would result in, I'll quote again, result in any traffic safety issues in the study area. What I'm asking you is, do you stand by that statement based on the 3 a.m. visits in the morning, which your report says, 3 a.m. in the night, that there would be no additional safety issues? I'm just looking for a recognition that you firmly believe that.
Mr. Norcross?
Your worship, anytime you add traffic to a road, there was definitely an increased opportunity for a collision. So there would be an increased, an increased opportunity for a potential collision. And we're not suggesting that there wouldn't be an increased opportunity for a potential collision. We're saying, is that consistent with what you would expect along that road? Is that typical for that type of road? And is that reasonable for that type of road? So in that sense, we believe that that the additional traffic is not an unsafe addition. Just like if you're adding in traffic from another subdivision, if this traffic came along from the side and it entered in from this road from the side, it's a reasonable amount of traffic to add to the existing traffic volume in the area. We feel that it is safe to do so along that road.
Thank you. Next is Councillor Sainsbury.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to the traffic person. Is that considered when you survey an arterial road or a local road for volume on a day-to-day basis?
Mr. Norcross?
I believe it is classified as a local road. Mill Street is technically classified as a local road.
Thank you. And I have another question, Your Worship. I wondered through you to Vanessa. Is Vanessa with us? She's the author of the planning report.
No.
No. I just wondered if anyone on staff.
We do have
knows.
a director sitting here, Councillor Sainsbury.
Pardon?
We have Director Hoppy here.
Oh, yes, perhaps. I just wondered how many letters went out to notify people within 120 meters of this actual property.
Director Hoppy.
Separate from the petition. Just how many people
Director Hoppy.
do we circulate under law?
Director Hoppy.
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Sainsbury, I don't have that specific number in front of me, but it's literally 120 meters radius from the property, 400 feet.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Hoppy.
So it would go east to Mr. Parks and south to that particular house that's on Forestall and so on. But it didn't go far afield beyond the 400 feet.
Like I say, as the crow flies, it's literally a circle that's done on the GIS layer. So it's 120 meters in all directions in a circle. Okay,
that was my next question. And the drainage problem to the east, I'm not sure who could answer that. It's there now, it's an as-is condition. It's not going to get better whether this house stays the way it is or whether the next house comes along and is built on that land. And unless we do the engineering and somebody pays to fix the drainage, it's not ever going to stop flooding in that particular location. So I know that the report is favorable. I'm looking at this from both sides, not just from a petition, because half those were done in capital letters. They weren't even signatures. But anyhow, that's another issue. I'm not terribly fond of petitions, so I'll be honest about that. The next thing is that they have a concern with it not looking Victorian enough, like the other homes that are on the south side of Mill Street. So is there some way through Mr. Fryette, who is still present, I believe, if Mr. Fryette, is there some way that we could just use brick, make it look like a very large or two very large, even though it's going to be 5 units, that it looks like a very large Victorian house instead of being separated and with aluminum and then brick and then wood and whatever.
Mr. Sainsbury, did you want an answer to your first question or did you want an answer to this one?
Well, I'll wait. Yeah.
Okay, I'll go to the Director Battery.
Through your worship to Councillor Sainsbury. Councillor Sainsbury, you're correct that through detailed design as part of the site plan, that's when they would start looking at correcting those existing flooding areas. And again, it was already alluded to earlier, with new development, we always ensure that the drainage is internalized and it doesn't go out onto the property. And any of those external drainage paths that are currently existing, they would then also be picked up and ensure that they had a proper outlet if they were draining onto those lands. So again, those types of issues would all be addressed as part of the detailed design, which would be in the future phases pending approval of the zoning.
Some of the people, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Battery. Some of the people, Your Worship, spoke about the condition of the existing sidewalks. Whether this is built or not, we can still fix the sidewalks because apparently there are dips in the sidewalk now and they pond with water. They freeze in winter and light smatterings of snow hide the ice and people walking their dogs have actually fallen. So perhaps someone from Public Works could look at that separate and apart from this actual application. And as far as the speeding, that's existing, people. And it has nothing to do either with this property. My concern, Your Worship, through you to the planner, Director Hoppy, is that it addresses all of the things in this application with the County of Simcoe's official plan, the policies for the province of Ontario for intensification, our own official plan, our zoning bylaws, and so on, except that it's not aesthetically the way people would like to see it. That's why I was hoping with Caroline and Mr. Fryette, they could change it somehow so that just the exterior facade looks like a very large Victorian house, but it would still be those units.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Harrison McIntyre.
Oh, Mr. Fryette didn't respond.
Oh, I apologize.
I can respond, yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for your comments. Yes, the drawings that were prepared and submitted in regards to the application, I would consider them to be schematic design drawings. Our purpose was to address matters related to access, general form, general character of the buildings. Through the design development and development of construction documents and the site plan approval process, we will have opportunities to develop this further and I think address some of the concerns. I have been listening to what people have been saying this evening. And we'd be quite happy to work with staff to bring forward a satisfactory building design that would be appropriate.
So, Mr. Fryette, would you be willing then, along with the owner and applicant of this application, because this is just committee of the whole, we would have 2 more weeks before this would be dealt with. The clerk could tell us the next meeting date. Instead of going from committee to council, then it could go to committee of the whole again, which would give us a longer time frame for you to design something Mr. Parks could look at and any other neighbor who wishes to, who is within the 120 meters.
Yeah, I'd say within the limits of the time available, and again, we'll have to have our client involved in this process. We've been trying to balance off a number of competing interests on the project to make this work, but we'll do our best and try to facilitate that.
Thank you.
Councillor Harrison McIntyre.
Thank you, Your Worship. First off, everyone's first option would be for the house to remain, for the property to remain, and for somebody to buy the house and renovate it and live there as a family. And it's a very attractive property, especially now for people out of the city. So if that's a consideration at all, there's other infill spots. Perhaps that's something that you can bring back to your client. That being said, as Councillor Sainsbury said, we are the lowest tier. Above us is the province and the county, and we are at the mercy of their rules and the rules about planning. So if we were not to work with the client to come up with something, then they would have the option of taking us to a higher level court, and then potentially everything's off the table and we won't have our say. So I would rather partner to get maximums rather than fight for minimums. That being said, I'd like to reiterate what was said by Mr. Parks, that this does look very much like a cut and paste. And thank you for saying that you're willing to work with us. that would be great, because it does currently, although it's a small improvement over what was first brought forward, it does look like something that's currently in a subdivision. And in respect to the existing neighborhood, it would be nice to try and make something that is compatible. Obviously, not trying to rebuild a Victorian home, but something that's compatible. Looking to other areas, looking to Toronto, looking to Uxbridge, looking to Kleinburg for examples. I would be happy to supply some examples of infill housing that was done. It's very tasteful. The idea of trying to minimize access onto Mill Street, has there been any consideration to putting in a back laneway with the garages in the back, coach houses, similar to some of the older properties in Toronto?
I'll go to Ms. Baker if she can direct the answer to.
Through His Worship, thank you for the opportunity to answer. It was actually a consideration between the public meeting and when we resubmitted in October. We did look at various design options. The reason we didn't proceed with it was based on a few facts. One, it would end up having a driveway in close proximity to the neighbor to the south, and would take away a rear yard amenity area. We were trying through the concept to maintain a larger rear yard private amenity area and minimize overlook. The second piece was from a traffic standpoint, is that in order to keep a backyard, the new driveway would have to be closer to the stop sign. And given the queuing of cars at the stop sign, it was deemed from a traffic standpoint to have all 5 driveways exiting off of Mill Street East.
Yeah, if I could perhaps just echo what Carolyn Baker has just stated. We did spend considerable time looking at options and trying to mitigate some of the concerns that were expressed. And we certainly did look at a rear access for parking to the buildings. And one of the big challenges, of course, was providing private amenity area for the dwelling units. And of course, it was pushing the dwelling units closer to the road. So we were very much conflicted with that, and then came back to the solution, what you see now.
Okay, Your Worship, if I can just wrap up really quickly. There was a suggestion of reusing the old bricks. I understand, the idea of that. They may or may not be in the kind of shape that would allow them to be reused. But I own an old home, and we have been able to purchase Ontario style bricks. So it's not necessary to reuse the brick to have the look of old buildings. And just, to put it out there at the beginning, it would be nice to increase the ratio of brick to siding, or perhaps just eliminate the siding altogether if possible. But as I said before, I would rather work with you to try and address some of these concerns and get the maximum than to have it out of our hands completely. Thank you, Your Worship.
Good point, Councillor Harrison-Mackay. Councillor Jeff?
Thank you, Your Worship. Ms. Baker had mentioned in her presentation about privacy as being part of one of the issues. And I look right now, and we have 2 families on this property. We're going to turn around and try to cram 5 families into this property. And I do like that idea of the backyard driveways, possibly putting a drive shed or a coach house for the cars to park in separate, away from the homes, how they used to have to do it back in the day. And I agree with Councillor Harrison-McIntyre that if we would be able to work with them and Councillor Sainsbury to make this building look like one big building, but I have a real concern about putting 5 families in there. That policy, provincial policy statement, was done pre-COVID, before Health Canada allowed everybody to have 4 plants in their backyard. You would end up with 20 plants in the backyard. of a certain kind. And I don't think that's very conducive for families raising their children. So those ideas were all pre other things that have come up in the years. So it would be nice if we could have them work away. If it reduces it down to 3 families or even back to a duplex would be really good. So it would be nice for them to come back with something. And I agree about the brick. And if they can put brick instead of siding, that would be another thing. Thank you, Worship.
Ms. Baker, did you wish to speak again?
Through your worship, if it'd be helpful just to, if I can provide a comment or two to the councillor's concerns regarding privacy. I'm not sure if that would be helpful. As outlined in our planning justification report, when I speak about privacy, with respect to this development, the 5 townhouses, of course, have 5 rear yards. They do comply with the zoning in terms of rear yard setback and private amenity area required. Part of the rationale to the design, if you look at the design in relation to the neighbor to the south, so the backyards abut the property owner to the south, there is in fact 2 rear yards and a portion of another rear yard that would back onto the neighbor's backyard. So through complying with setbacks, the use of fencing, and maintaining the predominantly 2-story height limit, those are the conclusions on privacy. I did certainly appreciate your comments on COVID. I think everybody on this call appreciates open space and fresh air with everything that's going on. And it's not to try to dissuade those comments, but COVID has also created a housing crisis. And we have communities with skyrocketing land values and sale prices, what we call the missing middle, which I believe is noted in the town's zoning bylaw comprehensive review that's being undertaken through the background report. And, when we look at fewer units and building materials, of course, compatibility and design is important, but I also don't want to lose sight through COVID in terms of just the housing need and the cost of housing. So I just wanted to raise that point as well, the many incredible facets of COVID and what it's caused to our communities. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Lacey, you brought it on. You have the last say.
I think a lot's been said, Your Worship. I'll just take time for a vote.
All right then. Thank you. From reading the council, I believe the majority of the council wants us to go back to staff again, or did you want to go with the bylaw that we have? Mover and seconder, please. That was sent back to Councillor Foster and Councillor Stan. Okay. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question. Would council be satisfied with this coming back as an additional information memorandum to the council meeting, or is council wishing it to come back to committee of the whole?
Come back to the committee of the whole, I believe is what they're
okay.
asking.
Thank you, Worship. So the proposed motion is that report PD 2021-01 be received, and further that staff be directed to work with the developer to bring forward additional options for the facade of the proposed housing development to meet the existing neighborhood, and further that a report be brought forward to the next regular meeting of council on February 1st with the proposed designs for council consideration.
Good. Thank you.
Would that be council or committee of the whole?
Committee of the whole.
Yeah. The whole.
That would be the committee of the whole meeting on February 1st.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any?
Wrong card.
Okay. Motion is carried.
We need an Alfred Hitchcock house.
All right. PW 5-2? No. Going in camera? Pardon me? I thought it was pulled. 5-2. All right, CW 5.2, and it's community improvement plan signage. And correct the, I can't remember who requested.
Councillor Harrison McIntyre.
There she is. You're moving all over my screen.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't know if the applicant is here tonight, but there was a quote that they received that had a couple different kinds of signs in it. And one of the signs was a sandblasted Western red cedar. That's a really good price. I'm taking down the name of this company. And if we could recommend that they consider that one over the PDC one, that would be what would most fit that area. Again, it's the downtown old area right near the steam train. You'll have all the people coming off the steam train, the tourists. It would be really nice if it was authentically heritagey, if that's a word.
The new one.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, I have a motion moved by Councillor Harrison McIntyre, a second by Councillor Jebb, that report of PD 2021-02 be received, and further that a bylaw be enacted to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a community improvement plan grant funding agreement with Helena Germain and Sean Domain, agent for Mill Street Family Dental, and the town, subject to final clearance by the town solicitor, and further that the following the execution of the agreement, the amount of $2,500 be transferred into the community improvement plan, reserved to be further transferred to the applicant as per the terms of the agreement. Councillor Foster and then Councillor Sainsbury.
I'll defer to Councillor Saint or Harrison McIntyre. I know what she's saying.
Sorry, Your Worship, I'm not moving that we just rubber stamp this and give them the go ahead. I'm looking for some more discussion with them, and again, trying to work with them to get the best, highest quality of sign that we can.
Okay. Councillor Sainsbury.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the people who are doing the grant for the town working with this applicant. We would pay 50% of the increased price to do a better sign that has more heritage look to it. So is the money in the budget for that? Is that going to complicate things because of the price of the second sign?
Okay. We'll go to Director Hoppy.
Through Your Worship to Councillor Sainsbury, yes, the money is our part of the budget. So that question is covered. And with respect to signage, I do believe the Western Red Cedar is the proposal that's before us today. But if it pleases council, I can confirm that detail at the next council meeting.
Director Hoppy, I believe you're right on the Red Cedar.
With teeth?
Councillor Sainsbury?
No.
Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mayor Mill. I think if you read the quotes, it shows a building sign at $5,800. It shows another building sign at $4,500. So it would appear from the quote that they offered them two options, and I don't. Maybe someone else read the report, but it didn't appear to have clarity. And if you look at the actual picture, it certainly didn't give you some impression that it was the higher quality Western Red Cedar. So I would second Councillor Harrison McIntyre's motion that we asked them to use the Western Red Cedar sign, which is, in her words, more antique, heritagey, whatever word she used.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Tiki, we'll have to remember that one. Okay, moved by Councillor Jebb, second by Councillor Lacey, that the committee of the whole convenes into closed session at 9:05 p.m. to discuss two items. CS1, a verbal report from the CAO, Reinvesting in Canada Infrastructure Program, and verbal report from the CAO regards the new Tecumseth Improvement Society. All in favor? Okay. we'll take a few minutes and come back here, but take 10 minutes, then we'll be back in 10. Councillor Foster.
And just before we leave the session, we probably should.
Oh, just a minute,
I think we're hooked up.
Oh, we're not live? Okay, go ahead.
One moment.
All right. And we're still, the public notices that we're still meeting this Wednesday night. I believe there's 4 items.
5.
5 items. 5 items, so it's going to be a long night. Okay, we adjourn the committee of the whole meeting of January 11, 2021 adjourns at
10:02, Your Worship.
Thank you. All in favor? Okay, we'll go into a special. Thank you. Motion moved by Deputy Mayor Norcross, second by Councillor Noya. Be resolved that the agenda for the special council meeting held on January 11th, 21 be confirmed as circulated. All in favor? Thank you. Anyone with a curious interest, you can sign it now or when the item is up. Motion moved by Councillor Sainsbury, second by Councillor Beatty, that the County of no, we don't need that one, do we?
Yes.
Be resolved that the report of ED 2021-01 be received and further that the proposed change to the projects funded through the County of Simcoe's 2019 Economic Development Funding Program be approved. All in favor? Thank you. Yes, 1. Moved by Councillor Foster. Moved by Councillor Foster, second by Councillor McIntyre. Verbal report, be resolved that the verbal report of the CAO be received and further that the confidential direction therein be approved. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Moved by Councillor Lacey, second by Councillor McClellan, that be resolved at the bylaw 2021-09 to confirm the proceedings at the special council meeting on January 11, 2021 be read a first, second, and third time enacted. All in favor? Carried. And Councillor Jeb, we resolve the meeting adjourns at
10:04, Your Worship.
all in favor? Carried. Thanks very much, Council. There you go.
Good night, Your Worship.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
If the weather holds up.